This is crazy. 7 Democrats and an independent just torpedoed everything. They just gave in without getting the one thing they've been demanding for the past 40 days. And while I'm actually going to be talking about 9 members of the Democratic caucus, I'm talking about these 8 because that's the exact number that Republicans ended up needing to break up the filibuster. And that because there was actually a Republican holdout, Rand Paul. The main thing, they get the 60 votes, they vote on a package that includes a stopgap funding bill that'll reopen the government through January 30th. Also, the package includes several bills to fund some government operations for the entire fiscal year, which is through September 2026, including agricultural programs, military construction, and Veterans Affairs. Also, one of the most notable things is going to include a full year of funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as food stamps. And the Senate deal would bring back federal employees fired during the shutdown and guarantee pay to those who either worked without pay or were furloughed, which is something that is normally provided, but also something that Trump threatened to withhold. But also, a huge thing is that what's missing is an extension of the enhanced tax credits that millions of Americans rely on to lower costs for health insurance purchased through the Affordable Care Act. Right? Instead, this deal, it just sets a date for a vote on extending ACA subsidies to take place in December. So there is no guarantee whatsoever that this will clear the Senate, let alone the House. And so immediately you saw a big backlash inside of the Democratic Party with, for example, people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying, people want us to hold the line for a reason. This is not a matter of appealing to a base. It's about people's lives. Working people want leaders whose word means something, with many House Dems reportedly talking about supporting primary challengers to their colleagues in the Senate. And on that note, you had Representative Ro Khanna going after Chuck Schumer, even though Schumer wasn't among those who voted for the deal, saying Senator Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. If you can't lead the fight to stop healthcare premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for? And that, as you had Bernie Sanders criticizing the move not only from a policy perspective, but from a political one. We're saying that this is the exact opposite of what Dems should have taken away from their domination on Election Day last week.
And what the election showed is that the American people want us to stand up to Trumpism, to his war against working class people, to his authoritarianism. That is what the American people wanted, but tonight, that is not what happened. So we've got to go forward, do the best that we can to try to protect working class people, to make sure that the United States not only does not throw people off of health care, but ends the absurdity of being the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people. We got a lot of work to do. But to be honest with you, tonight was not a good night.
And Bernie definitely wasn't alone in arguing this point of view, especially as most voters, they blame Trump and Republicans for the shutdown. With these 8, they caved just hours after Donald Trump was viciously booed at a Commanders game. Though again, outside of those 8, not all Dems are unified in being against this. Or you had Abigail Spanberger, who just won her election last week, Virginia's new governor-elect, backing the deal. And then with that, one of the state senators, Tim Kaine, who was among those who voted for the deal, argued that this move, it's actually the best chance to get the ACA subsidies extended, saying lawmakers know their constituents expect them to vote for it, and if they don't, they could very well be replaced at the ballot box by someone who will. Right, a thing to keep in mind there is that Virginia is home to thousands of federal workers. You also had Jackie Rosen of Nevada, right, another senator who voted for the deal, essentially arguing that it just wasn't worth trying to outlast Republicans because they were more willing to let Americans suffer, saying unfortunately, it's become clear as we go deeper into the second month of this Republican government shutdown that President Trump and Washington Republicans are weaponizing their power in alarming ways to inflict unimaginable pain and suffering on working people. Trump and his Republican cronies on Capitol Hill do not give a damn about hurting working people, and their conduct over the last month has been nothing short of appalling. Now, all that said, technically, as I'm recording this, not everything is set in stone, but it could take days for a final bill to move through the Senate, and the House, which has been out of session since the 19th of September, they'd need to come back to Washington to vote as well, with likely almost every Republican needed to get it passed. And there, while they may ultimately not get much to say in the matter, you had Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries vowing Democrats would fight against it, and adding, Donald Trump and the Republican Party own the toxic mess they have created. But then also with this, I'll say, in the meantime, while that's playing out, the effects of the shutdown, they're only going to continue to be felt. And I mean, not only in the time it takes to get this passed, but also it'll be felt even after it ends in some places. Right, one example, U.S. Airlines just canceled more than 2,000 flights yesterday for the first time since the shutdown began, and there were more than 7,000 flight delays, according to FlightAware. But then also, you've had officials saying that the country's long-time shortage of air traffic controllers, it may only end up getting worse after all of this ends. Or you have people like Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy saying that some have been speeding up their retirements lately, saying up to 15 or 20 a day are retiring. And then another example is, the more than 42 million Americans who rely on food stamps. They've been helpless as the Trump administration has fought tooth and nail not to give them the aid they've qualified for. It's been a whole thing. The White House first refused to tap contingency funding to keep that coming through November. Then 2 federal judges ruled that the administration had to make use of that money, but the administration announced it would only partially fund the program for November. Then you had a judge coming back and saying they should dole out the full benefits, but then the Supreme Court stayed the order so an appeals court could weigh in. Right, and then over the weekend, you had the Trump administration taking the opportunity to tell states to stop issuing full benefits and even undo distributions that had already been made. Though then the appeals court quickly weighed in and said that Trump must give out the full benefits. Right? And while that, it may be a win, all this back and forth, it means that food aid has already been delayed for tens of millions of Americans, some having only received a fraction of the help that they usually get, and others just still waiting, or just unsure if their payments will ever arrive. And so ultimately, while the potential end of the shutdown, it is sorely needed in many ways, we are going to see continued impacts. And there's also this question about the consequences of these Democrats rolling over. There are going to be impacts that are still felt. It's just a question of what, when, how. And there's also the question about what the consequences will be politically, both for Democrats and Republicans. And so with that said, that is the news. In this part, this is my opinion. I'm open to the possibility that December comes, things play out a certain way, and I realize, oh shit, I was actually being short-sighted. But for right now, it feels like what these 8 did, though I really think it's probably more, what they did was pathetic, it was cowardice, and it's gonna blow up in their face. And I say that possibly more people were involved because these 8, they have something in common. They are not facing their voters in 26. 2 are retiring, 3 are up for re-election in 28, and 3 are up for re-election in 30. Yeah, it makes me, pocket that little 5 to 10 minute rant video and focus on Chuck Schumer instead. Because Chuck, I think you think you're being smooth with it. But Chuck, I'm seeing more people than ever thinking you are a weak, mealy-mouthed weasel. Right, and with that, I'll say, I knew that you weren't built for this moment, but holy shit, it's almost impressive how useless you are. Like, it's no secret, you are up for re-election in 26, and it really looks like you're trying to save face with this no vote, but it appears that everyone's seeing right through you. But also, even if you're not being sneaky, it's not a great look, because you've either helped orchestrate the situation, have these 8 kind of take the hit, hope that it doesn't really affect them in the future. So you're being sneaky, or these 8 just ignored you, and so you're just ineffective, and neither of those situations inspire confidence. Right? Whoever headed either situation shouldn't lead. Like, your one qualifier is, I guess you put the L in leader. But hey, again, I could be right, I could be wrong. I guess we'll see in December. And in the meantime, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts. What are your opinions, reactions? What are your takes here?